All right, in this video we are going to come back to our work that's in progress, and we've flat filled the sketch, so we have put in flat colors and there's no sense of three-dimensionality in there. And what I want to do, I'm sorry, I'm just going to do this. What I want to do, and I forgot to mention this earlier, is you want to ensure that you have a variety of values. So not just colors, but a variety of values in your piece in order for it to read really strongly, and so the brain understands that there's this sense of form in here. So the other thing too with character design is you want to ensure that the value of the hair is different than the value of the skin, and the value of the skin is different than the value of the eyes and value of the lips. So it's not too much sameness. So what you can do is you can come on up to this black and white adjustment layer. Again, there's a couple different ways to turn black and white. Black and white adjustment layer is really nice because it's non-destructive. I'm just going to click it, and it's going to put on, and I can toggle this on and off, and it's going to let me do a value check, and I'm actually going to call this value check. And this is going to be something I'm going to toggle on and off to ensure that I have a nice range of values so that I can really distinguish the hair from the skin. And the skin and the eyes are a little close, but they're still distinguished in value. And value is just the lightness or darkness of your hue, of your color. And the lips look different than the skin. So I'm going to toggle that back on, and I'm satisfied with that. What I want to do now is oops, sorry, I'm going to delete that one out. What I want to do is I want to start bringing in some kind of rendering, some kind of lighting to the skin, so to make it more three-dimensional. So I'm going to bring in a new layer, and it's just going to be above the skin layer currently, and I'm going to call this skin lighting. So even though I'm including shadows in this layer, I'm going to still call it lighting because it's this illusion of light hitting some of the surfaces. So I'm going to work on this layer right now. And if I am bringing, I'm just going to make it a really different looking color so you can see. If I'm bringing something in here, if I'm coloring on the edges, you can see it's going outside, which I don't want that. So I'm going to undo that for a second. And what I want to do is I want to ensure that I've locked onto the pixels that are only in the skin layer. And this is why it's so great that we've put the skin on a separate layer, because if we color outside of the line, it's not going to go into the hair because that is on its own separate layer. Okay, so I'm going to actually go onto my skin lighting layer. I'm going to hold down Control, and I'm going to click the thumbnail, the little picture on the skin layer, and it's going to, you can see the marching ants selection tool, it's actually going to highlight that area and those pixels. On the PC, it works really seamlessly. On the Mac, it's kind of a little bit more difficult, but I want to hold Command H to hide the marching ants, the selection. Some of you might have Control H set to minimize on your Photoshop on the Mac. Please talk to me in class if that's what's happening. But I'm going to hit Control H, and I can't see the marching ants anymore, but you can see that when I color, it's only coloring on the skin layer. It's not going over the lips, it's not going over the eyes, it's not going into the hair. So I'm going to undo that entirely. So again, I'm holding Control and I'm clicking on that thumbnail, Command H, Control H in order to get rid of that. So what I want to do now is I want to bring some shadows into this layer. So I'm going to do all my shadows first. So I'm going to make it slightly darker than the skin tone, and then my highlights and my lighting is going to be slightly lighter, higher value. So I'm going to hold down Alt when I'm on the brush tool. Oopsies. I'm going to hold down Alt, and I'm going to click onto the skin layer, and it's going to pick the color of the skin and put it into my picker. It tells me exactly the color I've selected. I'm going to drop the color, so I'm going to go down a bit more to create a shadow tone. And I'm going to test this by just quickly coloring in here. And I'm going to go back to my value checker and turn it on and off so I can tell that it is in fact distinguished from the skin. It should be dark enough on this one. I'm going to make sure that my brush is on my soft op flow brush from your brushes that I gave you. I also want to ensure that my flow up here at the top is not 100%. You want to bring it down between 70 and 80. I'm going to do around 75. And I'm going to ensure that this brush is nice and large, because the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to swipe in some general shadows. So you also have to determine where your light source is coming from. So I'm going to have the light source kind of coming from her left, maybe not directly in front of her face, but kind of turned to the side, so the side and left. So I'm going to get, this area is going to be kind of darker on this side of her skin. So I'm just sweeping in some kind of large general shadows. And I can see, you can actually see the difference on my value check that's in there. So satisfied. The next thing I want to do is I want to bring in some form shadows. And I'm kind of expediting and accelerating this portion, but I want to bring in some form shadows. So the form shadows are going to be to create this illusion of that the object has this kind of contour and it turns. So what I want to do is I want to go to the edges of all of my, let me just minimize here, the edges of kind of her neck, and I'm going to sweep in this shadow that's in there. I'm going to do it over here as well. Really kind of subtly, again, undo if you feel like it's a little bit too dark. Really kind of subtly sweep this in. Should go maybe a little bit larger. That would be too dark at the top there. And go back and fix it after. And because I'm doing this on a separate layer, I can actually go back and I can erase this if I need to. And I'm going to kind of sweep in a bit of a shadow here. At this stage, you can also bring in some of your cast shadows. I actually might make this area under her neck darker, because this is going to remind me that there actually is going to be a cast shadow there. There's light here. Her chin is going to cut off where the shadow is going to be there. So it's going to be darker under that section. I'll go in and fix it up after. I'm going to make my brush smaller again, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit so I can see a little bit closer. And I'm going to sweep in shadows all around her face. So on her chin, I'm going to bring it into a bit into her eyes as well while I'm here, because this is her eye sockets. It's going to be deeper, and the light's not going to hit it as much. And I'm going to put a sweep in kind of shadow here just to give that illusion of a contour. And I'm going to do all my shadows first. It's a bit too dark. You want to just work in subtlety. I'm also going to make my brush a little bigger. I'm going to also sweep in a shadow here. Now, her hierogram's lagging a little bit, so it's hard for me to tell exactly how the shadow is looking. Also, I'm going to have probably under her nose is going to have a little bit of shadow, and there will be a cast shadow maybe a little bit down there if this light is higher. Again, I'm going to clean that up a little bit. So you want to go through and you want to include all of these different shadows in the parts. I'm going to pause and finish up. All right, so I went through kind of quickly and I added kind of light around the edges. I put in some of my cast shadows as well. And I'm just going to click on I'm going to toggle off the skin lighting layer to show you the difference between the flat and the starting to get kind of rendered. Again, this is going to go through multiple stages before you get to where you want it to be. The other thing I noticed was I didn't really like this nose. It was kind of harsh here. So I just want to show you what to do if you do make an error like that. You can go over to your eraser tool, and you want to make sure that your eraser is also on the soft op flow, and you can actually just kind of lighten this up a little bit here. So I want to kind of take away, whoops, again, I'm lagging a bit, so it's going a little bit kind of faster than I thought it would be. You can bring down some of the harshness of some of these edges. Again, this is the beauty of working on the lighting layer, and you're not working on the actual skin layer. So I'm not touching any of those initial tones or that initial hue that I've laid in on the flat fill portion. So I can go through and just kind of lighten up some of the areas that I feel that I've maybe put too much shadow on. The next thing you're also going to do is once you're satisfied with that, you're going to drop your, sorry, I'm going to go back to my brush tool, and I'm on my soft top flow, and I'm at 50% flow, and I'm going to, oopsies, I'm going to color pick. If you're not already on the tone that you've used to create these shadows, again, I'm going to hit Alt, I'm going to get my color picker, I'm going to click, and then I'm going to go back in, and I'm going to drop this again a little bit. And this is going to like really enforce some of those deeper shadows. So some of the deeper shadows are definitely going to be around the eye. This is definitely going to be darker again. And this is that, and we didn't talk too much about it, but there is some shadows are much darker than other shadows, or there's multiple kind of portions to a shadow, and some areas are lighter and some areas are really occluded and like really kind of hidden from light. You'll notice that also some of the parts there is showing, the background is showing through. Don't worry about that, we can clean that up later. And I'm just kind of going around and I'm really strengthening some of those areas kind of really subtly that I feel are going to be significantly darker than others. So actually I'm going to undo that. I don't like in the cast shadow, it's too dark, but the nostril is going to be darker for sure. Also maybe just under the ear here, because there's not going to be a lot of light that goes back in. Some parts of my ear are going to be quite dark. So I'm going to kind of do them a little quickly here. And then this is kind of going to cast down over the ear. Also, this kind of portion here, there's not going to be a lot of light and under the chin, so really kind of strengthen some of those areas with a slightly darker tone. I'm going to kind of brush in a little bit more under here. You'll notice too, the smaller your brush is, the kind of sharper and kind of more false it will look like sometimes. Just kind of strengthening that shadow up there. Again, you can toggle on and off and see that it is quite a significant difference. What you're going to do is you're going to go over all of the sections. So I'm going to do this to the eyes, bring shadows into my eyes, because my eyelid was going to cast a shadow over my eyes a bit. Inside my mouth, you may or may not need that, but the lips certainly will need some shadows put on there. And then the hair itself is going to include some shadows. So you want to darken those areas. Again, you want to keep in mind, I have my my light, I'm just going to draw it on here for a second. I have my light coming down from this side of the page. Sorry, I'm gonna have to deselect from this side, and the light is kind of shining down. Again, I'm not putting my lighting in yet. I'm working just in shadows, but this is going to dictate where the darkest of your shadows will be. And again, you can always erase it as needed.